right, so that out of the way, welcome everyone back to another episode of Earl Prep Live. Our show airs live every Sunday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern and 4 p.m. Pacific. Today is Sunday, September 17th, 2017. Welcome everyone who is live tonight, everyone who is in the chat room, and everyone who's going to be listening to this later on in the recording. First of all, let me apologize. I am very sorry that I wasn't here last week. I went and somehow messed up my wrist in a really big, bad way. And I spent just about the last 2 weeks, in absolute misery here, which we're going to talk a little bit about that when it comes to bad reactions to medicine. A little bit later on, because I had a really bad one, and I think it's worth pointing out because it's one that you could really try to rationalize and argue it away that that it was something else other than a bad reaction to medicine. But a lot of pain, but it is on the mend. I can actually turn a doorknob now, which I couldn't do before. So we may be getting to the point where I may actually be able to style my hair again. We'll see. We'll have to see. So far, I think I'm just lucky being able to tie it back with a clip somehow and just keep it out of my face for the time being. All right. So I do apologize for not being able to be live. I'm still kind of operating at the computer one-handed. I really can't type with two hands. So it's been very uncomfortable. And anyway, it's something that I think that you should think about for when we are in SHTF situation, because trying to go through life one-handed, even for a short period of time, in the best of times, is no day at the beach. Trying to do it when there's an emergency going on, you're really that's all I could think about for the past couple of weeks was, oh my gosh, if we had to evacuate right now, what kind of liability, would I be? I just wouldn't be able to do things. It's just, it was a very sobering moment there. So anyway, tonight, our friend Chuck Hudson is back with us again. For those who do not know him or maybe new to the show, Chuck is a rather frequent guest here. We got a lot of feedback back there. I can hear all kinds of background noise there. I don't know what just happened, but sounded like we went through a wind tunnel or something. All right. So anyway, Chuck is a frequent guest to the show, and he's a former combat medic. He's a former EMT paramedic. He's many things. He is a survival instructor. He's a firearms instructor. He's done a lot. Teaches out in New Mexico. Lots of courses on ditch medicine, what to do with what you have on hand, even in the worst of times. And in general, he's kind of how should I put this? What title did I give you? Director of Shenanigans, was that it?
Yes.
Yes, Director of Shenanigans.
Director of Shenanigans on the Western Division.
Yes, okay, there we go. The title grows. So, so welcome, Chuck, back to the show again. I'm glad to have you here. I already have questions for you from people who are emailing me, so we can start off with that. Anyway, maybe we got a comment in the chat room that maybe you could teach Dave Canterbury a few things, huh?
Oh, we're kind of breaking up a little bit. Well, at least you are. I don't know if I am.
Am I breaking up?
Back. You're back.
Am I back? Okay.
You're back. Yay.
All right. That's always a good thing because who knows where I am. So
know the feeling. I can empathize.
And that feeling comes from, it's just crazy. I think the world really finally went insane. And I don't know, the past couple of weeks, I think, or maybe I just snapped. Maybe it's not the world. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I reached my boiling over point. I don't know. I can't even bear to turn on the news anymore because it's like, okay, so we've got spin on this channel. We've got spin on that channel. oh crap, we've got a riot here. We've got, oh look, more threats and missiles going off over there. Oh, look at that. Oh, look where Russia's going into another area now. It's insane. There's trying to sift through all of this, and then it was the Equifax and Equifax getting hacked, and that hack to our electrical grid that nobody seems to talk about. It's driving me nuts. That hackers got access to our power grid, and in one case, access to a nuclear plant, and nobody's talking about it. It's just like, well, we had a hurricane or two. I know that they're bad. I'm not making light of that.
Oh,
but,
no.
I mean, that's a whole other world of hurt right there. But it was like, we can only have, am I still breaking up? Or, I know we're on a little delay, so I don't know.
No, you're clear. Because I can tell when you break up because I lose it too.
Okay, all right. So I think maybe that was in the chat room that was just on delay then. Okay, so anyway, yeah, I mean, we've had two insanely large hurricanes with, I mean, the damage has been, I mean, it's been incredible. And it's, we can only focus on one tragedy at a time. And, so the whole hacker thing just kind of, I guess, wasn't, well, you know how it is with news. If it bleeds, it leads, and I guess this didn't cause any bleeding yet. So, why that's not going to get really much attention.
Yeah, it's ugly. No matter which way you look at it, it's ugly.
I know. And, it's, even the coverage of the hurricanes, it's you want to be able to discuss that, there are certain things, and you can't discuss certain things without getting certain accusations, if you know what I mean. Like the looting, which has happened. I'm sorry, every disaster, there's looting. I don't care what you look like. After every single disaster, there's looting. That's part of it. And it's a very unfortunate part of it. But what, we can't report on that? And I don't want this to be a political show, but I mean, I think trying to sanitize the experience just sort of, it's like, well, yes, it was bad, but it wasn't that bad. I mean, these things will happen. I don't care what the tragedy is or what the crisis is or what the weather event was or what the emergency was. Unfortunately, there are people in society that will take advantage of that. We can't report on that. And to me, that just sort of, it's more of the media ratcheting up the tension between different segments of society. It's like, this is just something that happens after disasters, and it's happened after every single one I can think of. There's always that element that will take advantage of people when they're down. And thankfully, I mean, there are some good, there are some stories of, people helping each other, but then you see like these stories of the Red Cross and some of the crap that they've pulled,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know. Oh, it's horrible.
And it leaves you without, like, what do you even say, about them turning away food, turning away help, turning away supplies, turning away all this stuff. And I just, and then what they offer instead, like I saw like some of the comparisons, like they, in one case in Texas, the Harvey, victims, survivors, whatever, the Red Cross is like, no, we fed them, but it was like this one little meal, and they had it like it was one meal within 24 hours, and they turned away all of this food, and like, oh, it's for their benefit, their safety. Well, I think maybe they want more than one meal in a 24-hour period. I don't know. I just, if they're going to come in, it's like, if there's going to be any aid, we're giving it, and you can't be in on it. It's like, why? I don't know. I don't even understand that mindset. You got good people trying to do good things, and you're going to turn them away in the name of safety. But then, then you drop the ball on how you provide the care. So I don't know. I don't think they really have room to talk. Anyway, why don't we take a break before we really get things kicked off? Let me just say, if you have anything that you want to share, if you have a question, I know that I got a couple of questions emailed to me and texted to me from some people for tonight's show. You can call in. Let me give you the number. It's 347-202-0228. Remember to press 1 so that we know that you're waiting there. Or, you can join us in the chat room here. You can type your question in there. But why don't we take a quick break and let the station pay some bills. When we get back, we will continue with tonight's show. We are back, and we're having a little conversation in the chat room here. And I do know that there is liability for the Red Cross if it serves food that they did not have control over for the whole time in case anyone gets sick. But that's not the whole thing, though. They wouldn't let the people who brought the food serve it themselves. They weren't going to let them serve it. It's like, well, why can't these other people from outside who have had control over the food this whole time come in and they serve it? But no, if the Red Cross is there, they have to be the one who serves it. Says who? Who says? I want to know who says that if the Red Cross is somewhere, they are the only game in town that people can get assistance from. So if the Red Cross shows up and you want any assistance from them, however meager it is, then you are forfeiting aid from anyone else. I mean, some other, people come in, they make all this food and they're ready to serve you. And you have to say, no, I'll take my one crappy meal that I had 23 hours ago over that. You go throw that away. And somehow if they allow these people to serve it, it's the Red Cross's fault. No, it would be their fault for if they brought in food that made people sick. It will be on them. But, there is that thing about, Good Samaritans and people trying to help, and when people are volunteering and, in good faith. So maybe that's it. Maybe there's nobody with deep pockets to sue. But still, why does the Red Cross get to decide who shall be, the only, entity out there providing food to people? And we see cases of water being refused by the Red Cross. I mean, there's no excuse for that. Seeing as that got brought up in the chat room. I mean, how did that spoil? I mean, granted, you could say, well, it was on the back of a truck and maybe there's BPA in the water. I don't think they care about that right then. I wouldn't care about that. I mean, really, honestly, is that it? Is that the contamination that might possibly happen with sealed bottled water? I mean, come on. So anyway, I just, whatever. This is why, again, I think the world has jumped the shark. I don't know.
This is why you don't let Kat read the news before a show either.
Well, oh gosh, yeah. And
you're right though. You're absolutely correct. It's ludicrous. We've had the same thing here in New Mexico. We don't have the disasters of hurricanes or earthquakes, but what we have here is wildfires. Like what they're having up in the Northwest right now. And there's something that's not being covered very much. I mean, hundreds of thousands of acres.
I saw some of the pictures because we've got friends, up in the Northwest and looking at some of these things going, holy crap, why is this not on the news as much as all the other things that are going on right now? There's this huge section of the country. It's on fire. Does anyone know this? I mean, how could they not see this horribly, orange sky from miles away? I know they got news crews over there somewhere, and I'm just sitting here going, this is insane. How is this not all over the news? This is the kind of thing that we can only handle focusing on one event at a time. And this is usually how, when there's when our attention is something, because like I said, we can multitask as a nation apparently and focus on more than one thing. We cannot walk and chew gum at the same time apparently. This is usually when things get snuck in and passed and through Congress, but I don't think anything is getting passed through Congress these days right now, so that's a whole other story. But anyway, so I guess I don't know about anyone else, but I've just sort of been feeling overwhelmed. I've done a whole lot of nothing over the past couple of weeks except watching a lot of television because of my wrist, and I really can't do a whole lot. So, the TV and I got reacquainted after a very long time, and I'm going from news channel to news channel going, oh my gosh, if I watched this stuff like this all the time, I would lose my mind. I would absolutely lose my mind. And people, and some of the things that they think are stories, like, why would you even waste your time on that? But, so I'm glad that my wrist is starting to feel better so I can, get back to doing other things other than just kind of like being relegated to like my spot on the couch, just trying to, sit there with my hand in a sling and an ice pack. So, why don't we start off by talking about allergic reactions? That's so fun. Let's start off by talking about that.
And, I don't want to pick on you, but this is what happened over the last couple of weeks with Kat is a prime example of two professionals not paying attention. And, both of us, because both of us should have caught that this was an allergic reaction. It's just me just thinking about it. The reason why, because at first we both kind of diagnosed it as a sprain. However, as bad as she was hurting, it was missing one important feature: sprains bruise. Sprains are more painful and take longer to heal than a fracture. It's common knowledge. And also, a sprain immediately balloons. I mean, they get huge. Sprains also, you will see colors in your skin, especially as bad as she was injured. You will see sprains. They will blossom in colors that you didn't know the human body could do. None of that happened until she was really in she was really in comfort, and she asked her husband to bring her some ibuprofen. And you were taking the liquid ones, right? The liquid gels?
Yeah. Well, what happened was what I wanted was something that would allow me to take one dose before I went to go to bed and not have to wake up again and take another dose. Because I've got, obviously, just from the nature of the show, people should know, I've got tons of herbs around here that'll take care of pain. That wasn't so much the issue. The issue is the herbs, unfortunately, and this is one drawback, are generally not a time release sort of a thing. So, you're thinking, well, sleep's restorative, right? It's supposed to be, you want to be able to sleep through the night. And I thought, well, silly me, why don't we try some ibuprofen? And
you've taken it before.
I've taken it before, but it's been a very, very, very long time since I've taken it. I haven't taken it in a really long time. So, I didn't even think about it, but I begged him, please go out and get some. And he did. He went and he got some of the liquid gels, which are not usually what I take, but, they work fast. That's what it was on the box. It works fast. So, he's trying to be, the loving husband, and he wants me to feel better fast. So that's what he bought. So you want to take it from there?
Well, yeah, and she would normally, the treatment for a sprain is rest, ice, compression, elevation. And she had kind of a compression splint on. And, she was swelling around the splint, which is unusual in a sprain. Normally, when you compress a sprain, you'll push the fluid back in it, and some will go above the splint. Very rarely will it go down the splint. So, I'm thinking, hey, are you elevating enough? Are you wearing a sling? So we put her into a sling for a few days. And you were taking, about 400-600 every, 4 to 8 hours, something like that? Or 2 to 4 tablets?
It was more like 600 to 800, but
600 to 800, and after the first week, she hadn't improved. In fact, she had gotten worse. And and by literally, and I fault myself on this too. By the second day, we should have said, hey, we got no bruising. Your swelling came later. What's going on here?
And not only that, the swelling kept getting worse and spreading. And that was when I'm like, I can't, I got to stop, because it wasn't just my hand that was swelling. It was both of my feet, both of my legs. I went to bed one night and the weight of the sheet was against my legs was painful. Because it just, from how swollen, I had gotten in a very short period of time.
Yep. And so, it was one of those things. And then finally, we both kind of just like at the same time said, have you tried any of your herbal medicine? I asked her, can you take aspirin? And
yeah, because I was taking that during the day.
And so she stopped the ibuprofen, and guess what? She improved. And what happened to Kat was a prime example of a late onset allergy, a medication allergy. We see it all the time, but mostly it's more violent. When a sudden onset allergy is generally fairly violent. Generally, it involves what's called anaphylaxis. It affects the breathing, the throat. You close up, you can't breathe, and even intubation sometimes won't work, or it will cause hives. But she did get one of the symptoms. She got swelling. And here you got two people who are supposed to be knowing what the heck we're doing. We both missed it.
Well, the other thing though was that I kept looking at it and I kept thinking, well, this must be swollen. The swelling is just from the sprain. That's all. It's swelling because, sprains hurt a whole lot. And, there was all this pain. And I thought the swelling was a result of all of that. But what was happening was the swelling was causing a great deal of the pain. It was just painful to move my hand from the swelling, just like it was painful to move my feet or my legs or any of that because of the swelling. So where I was thinking the injury was causing the pain and the swelling, it was really the swelling that was causing the pain.
Yep.
And so it was, but I rationalized it because I just couldn't wrap my head around, because I had taken ibuprofen before. So allergic reaction was not really on my radar. You know what I mean? I haven't taken it in a long time. But, when I think about what if I'd been taking it all day? What if I wasn't just taking it at night? You know what I mean?
Yep.
So.
But, that's one of those things that, it's a bad thing that it happened, because it put her through, a week and a half, 2 weeks of extra pain.
Yeah.
But it's a good thing that it happened to wake us back up and say, whoa, we need to pay attention to little details. We get so focused. We get that tunnel vision. We know this, we know that, we know the other. And we've taken this hundreds of times. It hasn't affected us, but all of a sudden one part of the equation changed. And this incident right here is a perfect example of why you have to pay attention to your patient and quit treating the symptoms and treat the patient. We're treating the symptoms. That's
exactly what was happening. And it's very easy to do. It's an easy trap to fall into. Even, in my field where, there's a heavy focus on treating the person and not the illness. But this is the default. This is like the worldview that we've grown up with, with modern medicine. That's sort of the paradigm that we have all grown up with, and that we have all come to sort of like, that's the baseline. That's where we all start from. It's just been ingrained in us, for so many years.
Mm-hmm. It's like I teach, when I worked, working in the hospital, and we would teach basic advanced cardiac life support. I was an instructor for advanced cardiac life support, and we would teach people, treat the patient, not the monitor. And basically, I broke my own rule on this. We treated the monitor, which was the swelling, but we didn't treat the patient, which was Kat. And it can happen, and this is a prime example of something that you have done for duck eggs. Oh my gosh.
Duck eggs. Oh, hey, we're not saying what I've done for duck eggs for baking.
That's right.
That's a whole other show. Yeah.
Because you might be allergic to those too, but no.
Who knows?
But this is a prime example of something that you've done for decades, and it's worked on you, and all of a sudden, it's not working, and you are getting an odd reaction, and it just shows that no matter how good you think you are, how good you really are, if you forget the basics, and this is a basic. This is as simple as what we call ABCs. Airway, breathing, circulation. Paying attention to your actual patient's history is one of the basics. And we broke that rule, and we put her through a couple of weeks of extra agony that she did not need. But also, and a good thing though, it brought up a topic that we never talked about before. What happens to this? What happens, and how would now? What if this went further? How would you have treated this if it would have been? Say she would have had a more violent reaction. Say she picked up hives, or she started getting short of breath, or she had a blood pressure rise or drop from this. This is one of those things that's a good discussion on what you could have done over this. I mean, first things first. Like 90% of the people on the planet, if she had a, say you had a hive reaction, you got hives over it. My first go-to, believe it or not, would be Benadryl. But you got that 10% of the population that is very sensitive to Benadryl. My wife is one of them. She can take it, but what it does in her, 90% of the population, Benadryl will put you to sleep, and it breaks down the histamine barrier. But on my wife, exact opposite. She starts bouncing off the walls with it. I mean, she can't sleep. She's jittery. It's like, she took 5 puffs off an albuterol inhaler.
Mm. Yeah.
But what if you don't got Benadryl? What are you going to use then? This was a good thing that happened because it brought up something that really needed to be talked about. Don't you think, Kat?
Oh, absolutely. So what I would be looking at there would be a natural antihistamine, which would, to me, is nettle. And you could do a number of things there. You can have nettle tea, a lot of nettle tea. You'd have to have a lot of nettle tea, and it'd have to be strong. You could also have nettle tincture. You can take quite a bit of that at first, but
like out here in the West, we don't have as many nettles as you, but I got Mormon tea, which
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm like, yeah, that's right. You got that. I mean, but every region's got, what they, the something. It's amazing. Every region has something that's local to them that will deal with it. I also think, so let's say if someone had, let's say that anaphylaxis reaction where they started with their, well, first of all, assuming that you can get to a hospital, let's just get this out of it. Just so that we say this, the disclaimer here, we are advising you to go to the hospital because that's what we would have to, don't mess around with anaphylaxis, if you don't have to. This is a hypothetical. What would you do if you don't have this? So We've had, we've had something horrible happen. I don't know. Russia and, North Korea and Pakistan and like China, they all got together. They all ganged up on us and we're in the middle of a war. I don't know. Or hackers, were able to set off, some type of accidents at various nuclear plants. I don't know. But we're in the middle of a major catastrophe and getting to a hospital is not a possibility for some reason or other under these circumstances. So what I would probably reach for would be, if someone can't breathe, lobelia would probably be my first choice to go to. And, I think between nettle and that, you'd probably be able to, as long as it wasn't like an attack that happened so fast that you didn't have
time for it, right?
Right. As long as you've as which of course would help if you have somebody else there with you, that could, take on the task of, all right, I'm going to make the tea now, and I'm going to go grab that tincture bottle for you. And, I'm going to get this prepped for you so you don't have to, focus on that. And, as long as you've got that, your chances are a lot. Yeah, but you have to keep it up. You can't just say, okay, I took a cup of tea and I'm all good. I wouldn't do that.
And there's a question in the chat room. Does caffeine help at all? No. Caffeine is a stimulant in the same family as, believe it or not, cocaine. It's in that same type of family. Whereas epinephrine, or the ephedra of the Mormon tea, epinephrine or from the EpiPens and all that, is a totally different class of drug. Yeah. Now, caffeine will help accelerate the effects of, say, nettle tea or Mormon tea, and the reason why that's nothing I've tried, but the reason why I'm going off that, and Kat can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm wrong a lot of times. My wife tells me so. No, no, but seriously though, Excedrin is a prime example. Excedrin is the migraine reliever. All it is aspirin, acetaminophen or Tylenol, and caffeine. What caffeine does, caffeine will increase the heart rate, increase the blood pressure, and move it to the system faster. However, I would be really careful with it, because there's sometimes you don't, if you're having an anaphylactic reaction, it's not a good idea, I don't think, unless you have something that's going to break that histamine barrier, to accelerate heart rate anymore. Because say let's go just a little bit off topic. Say you're stung by a bee and you're allergic to bees, and you drink, you're doing a bunch of ephedra. It's already going to bump up your heart rate. If you've ever had Mormon tea, it's a pretty decent stimulant. And if you add caffeine to that, you might overload yourself.
Well, the other thing that I wanted to mention also, because if you were to know that you had an allergy, let's say to a bee sting, because that's usually when people think about an EpiPen. So that's epinephrine. And we don't have an herbal epinephrine source, but we do have an herbal, ephedrine source. And that is a similar, it's not identical, but it's a similar chemical. So that can be found in ephedra. That's where the name comes from. Now, there is no product sold on the market as ephedra, because it got used in weight loss pills. And of course, we think, if a little is good, more must be better. And so they put it in very high doses in diet pills. And then people taking the diet pills also thought, well, if a little is good, more is better. And so they went and took a whole bunch of them, and some people ended up with some cardiac issues that had some very bad outcomes. So therefore, the solution the government comes up with is can't sell anything with ephedra. You can, however, grow it, or you may be able to find a variety of it growing in your area. It's not illegal to grow. It's not illegal to possess, but you can't sell a product with it. So Mormon tea is a related plant, and that's widely available to purchase. So.
Right.
That would be that. And then but then you have to keep in mind, that's just to bring you out of that reaction for the moment, because the treatment, like Chuck can tell you, is when you go to a hospital, after you've administered your EpiPen and you go to the hospital and said, well, I was stung by a bee and I started to have a reaction. I gave myself my EpiPen. What are they going to do? They're going to give you...
Oh, they're going to give you more, actually. They'll put you on to what actually we call it nielsinephrine, phenolphthalein.
Yeah.
Phenolphthalein or norepinephrine. And there are, a few years ago, Kat and I talked about, herbal alternatives to certain drugs. And there is, we'll talk about, I'll have to talk to Kat on a break or something like that about that. But yeah, they'll put you on norepinephrine. Believe it or not, they'll put you on what is that? Pepsid. I forgot the name of it. They'll put you on IV Pepsid because
really?
it's an H2 blocker, which is one of the histamines. and it's less violent than epinephrine. They'll use it to bridge the gap of epinephrine, norepinephrine, and then they'll put you on a Pepsid, and it kind of like brings you down slowly instead of kind of just turning you all the way off.
Yeah. Or then they also could give you they could give you the Benadryl too.
Right, Benadryl. Yeah, they'll put you on a lot of IV Benadryl, and that's where you find that 1%, that 10% that you pop them with 50 milligrams IV Benadryl, and all of a sudden, it's like they smoked, a pound of crack.
Yeah. So, the thing is, we don't have, things that are exactly analogous, to these drugs. But, looking at what we do have, that would sort of be like the Mormon tea followed up by a lot of nettle to bring down that the allergic reaction. But it would really help, if you had someone there to help you make all this, because that's a lot to make.
It is.
And let me see. There's other things too. Because if you're swelling up, I got to tell you, that swelling was scary. I haven't had swelling like that since I was pregnant, but at least when I was pregnant, I knew why I was swelling up, I was like, well, duh, I'm pregnant. Of course I have swollen feet. I'm pregnant. Pregnant women are supposed to have swollen feet. So, but I'm like, that's my youngest is 7, so that's not the problem. So there's something else going on here. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So when you're stocking up on over-the-counter medications, understand that by the time that you go to take them, you may not be able to take them. So at that point, what would they become? They'd become a barter item for someone, but you'll need a backup. So don't just stock one thing.
Right. Yeah, because
that's the clue, the key there.
It's the same thing in medicine, because in big pharma or Western medicine, for 85-90% of people, epinephrine works, but then you got that 15-20%, 10-15% of people where.
Whoops! I lost you. Did everybody else lose them? One sec.
Sure.
Oh, there you are. You're back. Yeah, I lost you for a second. So if you said something in the past 30 seconds, I lost you.
Oh, well, yeah, we're having a pretty decent thunderstorm out here.
Oh, okay. All right.
So, if we lose it, I might just call, but, if we lose power, I'll have to call in. The computer will die. But, like Kat said, don't stock one thing. Stock multiples of them. Even if you have to, I hate to say order it from a different area of the country, but because I know there's certain parts of the country, like Mormon tea does not grow in good soil. Basically, you look for the poorest, crappiest, most alkaline soil here in the Southwest, and it'll be covered in Mormon tree plants. But you generally will not see it in soil that's halfway decent. Also, altitude and temperature it doesn't like.
Yeah. But even still, if you're stocking up, right now times are still relatively good for all of the insanity that's going on out there. You can still order it. So, while you're stocking up on everything else, it's great. I think the thing is with herbs, it's great that you can go out and you can find them all over the place, right where you are. And of course, that's sort of like the best of all solutions there, that you can go out and wildcraft whatever is right there. But what if you happen to be allergic to whatever is right there? Maybe, you might want to have a backup. So that's one thing that we were going to talk about tonight. I had an email or rather a text from a friend of mine, and I gave him my answer, but I told him that I would still ask you too.
So I'm being tested again, damn it.
You are. All right. So for 10 points and on your final grade depends on this. Now,
Alex, I'll take.
You must answer in the form of a question. Maybe not, but let's see. So he wanted to know, what can you use if you're outside, something happens, and you've got a wound that will at some point need to be covered. That'll need to be stitched at some point. What can you do in the moment to cover that wound? And what can you find in nature around you that you could use as a painkiller?
Oh, okay. Believe it or not, I live in a desert, and in a lot of places in the desert, there's not a lot of plants. And I've used many times, quick clot. Hey, it stops the bleeding. However, you probably don't have quick clot, and I've used dirt. Seriously, I've packed a wound. I've dug down, quote, quote, clean dirt and done it with that. And a friend of mine never believed me. He's a big time. He's a really big shooting instructor, has his own academy in Arizona, and he never believed me until he saw a movie. What was it? Lone Survivor it was. And the medic, they were out. He was out of everything, and a couple of guys had been wounded pretty bad, and the medic had packed the wounds with dirt. And it does the same effect as quick clot. Now, it's a pain to get out, and yes, you have to deal with the infection. Now, pain killing, I'm trying to think I'm looking at what we got growing out here in this desert, and there's really not much that will kill the pain. So first thing, it'd be direct pressure on a wound, and then to cover it, I would probably just use, if I have it, comfrey is really, in parts of New Mexico is really good, but realistically, if it's that bad that needs to be stitched and all that, you probably don't want
to use comfrey
just
yet.
Not yet, but I would, basically, believe it or not, I would just pack it with dirt because it'll stop the bleeding. It'll form a protective barrier over it, and it will basically protect it. And then you can just wrap it with with something just to keep it in place because it will form a very hard clot. Adobe mud bricks that we use here in New Mexico to build used to be made with blood, straw, clay, and water. And you'll see those bricks are in some of the Spanish missions that are 300 or 400 years old. Are still standing.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you what I told him. I said that you could possibly if you've got a clean portion of your shirt or something, rip it off. Bandage it up so you can get back. Hopefully that'll do it. If you've got, while you're out walking around getting back to base camp, you may be able to find a few things, but willow bark, maybe birch bark, both will get you some salicin.
Yeah.
But depends if you've got either of those, on your way back to wherever you're camping at. Mm-hmm. Wherever your destination is, are you going to pass those? So maybe you should have a first aid kit. That was one thing that I would suggest. Yeah. You should have a first aid kit.
The IFAKs. We've talked about that one.
So have a first aid kit. But in that first aid kit, then now you're planning ahead a little bit. Now you've got some options. So California poppy might be a good one. You can certainly mix that up with some others.
Actually, yeah, we do got that. We do. I just saw one here that we do have that does grow here in the desert. It's a very good painkiller, and it's the same. It's a similar family as California poppy. We call it prickly poppy.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen it, it looks like a thistle, except it has a white or yellow poppy flower on it.
Yeah. So speaking of the chat room here, well, not that we were speaking of it, but I'm going to speak about it now. So I'm reading in the chat room. Someone has suggested whiskey. First of all, I'm drinking my whiskey. That's the first thing. That'll be my first source of not feeling that pain is I'm going to drink my whiskey or my bourbon. You also responded with not whiskey, and if we had time, that you'll tell why. So why don't you tell why not whiskey?
A little story here. Good friend of mine, he got in a bar fight. This is about 15, 20 years ago. He got in a bar fight. Punched this guy right in the mouth and just ripped his hand open. Rule number one, don't punch people in the mouth. Well, he's seen way too many John Wayne movies, and he took a bottle of Jack Daniels, took a couple of slugs, and poured it on his hand. Jack Daniels is almost 90 proof. It's about 42%, 43% alcohol. The next morning, though, he had a hand that was putrid, swollen, and red stripes running up his hand. The reason why, dark liquors except brandy for some reason, but whiskey, dark rum, gold tequila, any of the dark liquors like that have residual sugars left in them. That's what gives them their taste. Bourbon, the oak sugars that come out of the barrels. And that is just making a perfect, what's called a sugar and blood cocktail for bacteria to feast on. Yes, the initial alcohol will kill everything, will kill some of the stuff. It'll evaporate off, and it will leave behind the sugars. If you ever leave whiskey, go ahead.
And it's so odd because sugar was used to pack wounds in like World War One, and
it works great,
and it works fine. But now when it's
all about concentration. It's all about concentration. It's the same with honey. Honey is pure fructose, but you pack it into a wound. It is also a fantastic antibiotic. It's all about concentration. The amount of sugar that's left in alcohol is minimal. I mean, you could test it with a hydrometer and get you a rough percentage, but it's less than 1%. But it's enough to, after the initial alcohol burned off or evaporated off, you would have a barrier. Now you want to stick with white liquors. Vodka, white rum, white tequila, white corn liquor, moonshine. Reason why those are not aged in barrels. There's no residual. They're distilled out they're just the alcohol, then diluted with water. Now brandy, on the other hand, brandy is one of those weird ones. Brandy is distilled from wine, and there's a lot of residual sugars in it. However, it's got something else in it too that is a very good antibiotic. It's called tannins. Tannic acid is at a high level in brandy, and you acidify the area. It doesn't grow good. It's like vinegar. What's it? Acetums?
Yeah.
Certain acetums, but certain bacteria will grow good in vinegar. Mother of vinegar is a primary. Acetobacter is one of the primary ones. However, though, it will change the pH of the blood content of that area, and it actually inhibits bacteria. But yeah, just don't do John Wayne. Don't pour whiskey on it. Drink your whiskey. Use vodka. Use white liquors.
Yeah. So you can do that, but save the whiskey and the bourbon.
That's right. That's an internal anesthetic.
Yeah. That's your liquid analgesic there.
There you go.
That you want to, when you were talking about pain relief there, that's don't care anymore. It hurts, but then there's the other pain reliever that is where you just sort of like clench your teeth and stomp on the ground, and somehow expletives come out of your mouth while your teeth are clenched somehow, and you just kind of get very upset with yourself for having done whatever silly thing it was that you did that got yourself cut in the first place. So yes, cussing helps. That's right.
Yep. It's just one of those things. So my friend Cope tells us at every class. I teach with him a lot. He's got Southwest Shooting Authority, and I teach a lot of classes with him, both on shooting and on medical. And we always get that question. What about whiskey? And he's the one that tells that story. He doesn't drink anymore, but, he's going to tell that story. And he also keeps a goodly supply of cheap vodka in the house. And that's the major reason for his vodka is it is a much better thing to sterilize with than brown. I wouldn't even sterilize. I wouldn't even put instruments in whiskey to sterilize, where I would not hesitate with vodka. Even if the whiskey was 100 proof and the vodka was only 80 proof, I'd go with the vodka just because there's no residual sugar left in it. What else we got?
Well, I had another question.
Okay.
Actually. So this is under prepping and survival for 800. Okay. So out of all of the latest headlines, which, if any, have changed how you prep the most, or have any?
Well.
Or let's phrase it another way. No, of all of the stuff going on right now, what's bugging you the most? What irks you the most? What makes you the most nervous?
The most nervous is the threat of not a nuclear strike, but of a nuclear device being exploded in the atmosphere, an EMP.
Okay.
Because that's changed a little bit more how I prep. Because in the 80s, I'm a Cold War era soldier. Ivan, Russians are going to barbecue. I remember elementary school hiding underneath the desk drills, because they're going to get nuclear bombed. But I think the thing has changed my method of prepping and focused a little bit more on protection of my radios and stuff is just threat of EMP. Both from the sun and from short fat guy with bad haircut.
And I gotta say,
go ahead.
Yeah, I would say that's sort of the same thing too. Whether it's an EMP or whether it's hackers in the grid, the grid going down is from whatever cause is what's bugging me the most at the moment. I would say we got about a minute and a half, so I wanted to just thank you for coming on again. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Because somehow that hour just kind of went, and I'm not exactly sure.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's time. So thank you for being here, and I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. I hope that you got something out of it. Please check out my books, Prepper's Natural Medicine and Prepping for a Pandemic. Please go to my website, herbalprepper.com. I've got some classes up there you should check out. And Chuck's going to be having a class coming up pretty soon. I'll have more information about that maybe next week for you all. So anyway, this has been Kat, the Herbal Prepper, and this has also been Chuck also here. And we will see you again I'll see you again next week. I don't want to commit him. So anyway, we'll see you.